Welcome to the Glow Up Girl podcast, the show where purpose meets inspiration. Each week, I sit down with incredible individuals who open up about their real life journeys, the wins, the setbacks, and the lessons in between. Whether you're navigating career moves, entrepreneurship, or personal growth, you're in the right place. I'm Kyra Mitchell Wooster, host, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's glow up together. All right, so before we dive into today's conversation, just a few simple housekeeping things. As always, if you're interested in Glow Up Girl merch, make sure you check out our shop on glowupgirl.com/shop. And if you're ready to dig deeper into your story, if you've listened to podcast episodes, whether it be Glow Up Girl or other podcasts, and you're thinking, I have a story to tell, I would love to, figure out what that story is, then you should visit glowupgirl.com and click on Story Labs. It is where I offer you a personal space to uncover your own voice, your own narrative, and also figure out how to share your story with confidence. So make sure you go there and check it out. And finally, for all my creatives and entrepreneurs, be sure to stop by Studio Wonderwell at hellowonderwell.com. It's a place that I've created for dreamers just like you and me to design smarter workflows, marketing strategies, as well as messaging your brand strategy. All right, so I hope you all are doing well. I hope you are having a fantastic Thursday. And as always, I'm so excited that you are here with me today. Let's talk about our guest today. All right, today's guest is Fanny Tristan, a woman's empowerment coach and trauma therapist, and the founder of Her Soul Supply, a community built to help women embrace healing, confidence, and growth. Fanny is passionate about helping women navigate breakups, redefine singlehood, and tap into the full potential of what she calls their solo era. She brings both professional expertise and heart to her work, guiding women to see this season not as a setback, but as an opportunity for transformation. We're talking about the power of rediscovering yourself after heartbreak, setting boundaries, and creating a life you truly love. So let's get into it. All right, let's welcome Fanny to the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, why don't we get started by having you tell everyone listening or watching who you are and what you do, and then we'll dig a little bit deeper from there.
Yeah. So, hi, everybody. My name is Fanny Tristan. I am a trauma therapist and coach for single women. I have a private practice that I own where I work with eldest daughters at the intersection of trauma and birth order. So, doing a lot of mental health work there. And also recently founded Her Soul Supply, which is a coaching platform and social club for single women who are looking to not really center romance as the main source of their happiness and fulfillment.
Oh yes. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. Well, let's talk about Her Soul Supply first. What
Yeah.
inspired you to create this platform?
Yeah. I love this question because I kind of tell my origin story a little bit. So, as I mentioned, I have a private practice. So I've been doing therapeutic work and mental health work for over a decade. And I noticed something in my private practice. I noticed that there were a lot of women coming into the practice who felt like their presenting issue was that they were still single, like they were in their 30s or 40s, or had experienced breakups or had never really had a healthy relationship before, and just feeling like they were really the problem. And, as someone who has been there and has understood just that discomfort, that pain, that sometimes self blame that goes on around that I wanted to support these women in ways that just felt too limited by my therapy practice because like any kind of medical model, right? You have to diagnose someone and you have to give them a treatment aligning with that diagnosis. And for some women, they needed that, and we did a lot of wonderful work together. But I think for the most of the population that came in with this specific issue, you know, I didn't feel like I needed to diagnose you just to show you some of the ways and the tools that help you love yourself a little bit more or help you
Mhm.
find your place in the world a little bit more. Women are often put in what I call a relationship escalator, right? Where, you're supposed to date and then,
Mhm.
you find someone to marry and then you have kids. And, we all know this escalator. It's around the entire world.
Right.
But what happens when you find yourself not on that escalator or you were on it and you fell off of it and you
Mhm.
just thought everything was supposed to be in place and you feel a bit lost because no one else has given you another path, right? The red
Right.
carpet is rolled out to us for that escalator, but
Right.
what happens when maybe that's not what you want, or you didn't want to do it with the person that you're dating or whoever you're seeing?
Mhm.
You don't see that kind of experience for yourself. And so I really wanted to give single women this soft place to land where they can really do some personal development work, understand some of the systems in place that we live in that get us feeling like we're not good enough, right? Things like
Mhm.
racism, the patriarchy, right? These
Mhm.
kind of value systems that tell us how to be instead of help us find who we are. And
Right.
we do a lot of that development work, understanding yourself, understanding other people, how to build community that feels safe and abundant and aspirational, and
Mhm.
throw in a little bit of travel too, because that's a really big component of
Yeah.
healing and transformation and growth that I think is really helpful, especially when women are single.
Yes. Oh gosh. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And you are so right. I mean, as women, we are taught this is the thing that you're supposed to do. And and it must be done in these steps, and you must follow this order. And God forbid you decide that it's not the order or it's not the thing that suits your life, right? Like, but it's been these like predetermined, like do this. And it even starts like from the time I know for a lot of time with black women, especially like where it's like go to college, get a degree, get in it, or go to college, get an internship, get a degree, get this job, work in this space, move up the ladder, get a partner, marry, have children. And it's just so like,
Mhm.
predetermined. And you're like, no, I'm sorry, I don't want that. So I really love that you created this space for women to evolve and just grow and just be in love with themselves, because that is the thing that I think so many people skip, is the loving themselves, but just out there reaching and trying to find love from someone else, that the partner that they were told that they should have. So I want to talk about what you refer to as the single era, and let's talk about that potential. Why do you feel like in that chapter of life that it could be so transformative for us?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think singlehood is a treasure trove
Mhm.
of personal development, personal growth, because whether you have been single a while or maybe you're just off a breakup, right? Or maybe a situationship that didn't really work out, right?
Yeah.
I think that these are points in our lives where we can do so much self reflection, right? Around questioning, am I seeking something that was predetermined? Do I even align with that? Why do I align with it? Right?
Mhm.
Um, what is it that I'm looking for? Right? What are the lessons that I've been learning on this journey? Right? Because singlehood isn't about finding a partner. Singlehood is about finding your alignment in life. And when you get to really live a life that makes you feel fulfilled in all of the different ways, I always talk to my clients about how we have different cups in our lives, right?
Mhm.
Different people fill different cups, different activities, different parts of ourselves come out, right? And to live in a fulfilled way is for all of those parts of us to breathe, right?
Mhm.
The nurturing side of us, the competitive side of us, the loving side of us, right? That we're not just this one thing. And so when we curated a community or a lifestyle that lets all of those things live in harmony, right? We actually
Mhm.
become really magnetic, right? Like we're
Mhm.
kind of living in what we say is our truth, right? And
Yeah.
so when we are magnetic, then that's a great time to meet people, whether it's romantic or friendship, right?
Yes,
People are
yeah.
looking at you and they're like, what is she doing? Oh, I like her vibe. And they pick
Right.
you,
Yes.
right? Which
Yes.
is a much better place to be than what do I need to do to get
Yes.
someone to love me, to get someone to date me, to get someone to choose me. I think
Mhm.
it's the opposite of what some dating coaches out there will say, right? About like what you need to do to get a man or,
Mhm.
like how you have to be more soft. And, I
Mhm.
feel like, especially for women of color, you can't really tell us about how we need to be more soft without having to address why we have had to be a little hard, you
Exactly.
know? And
Yeah.
so it's deeper than that. I hope that answered your questions. I feel like I went on a bit of a tangent.
No, no, I love that because I think, everything you said is it's so important, because just we people, we've been conditioned to think that it's not okay to be single. And as someone, who is married, I always tell people, oh my gosh, like get married in your mid 30s. Like, because life is so like, you have so much to learn about yourself and who you are as a person, and you have to evolve and feel comfortable and confident in your own self and love yourself first before you can give whatever that other person, needs, or however you connect together with a soul partner, a soulmate, or whatever terminology you want to use. But I just feel like if we could just, I love that you said that because it just almost like strips those that elevator, right? And place that says you must do it in this order. And I know you didn't mention that as far as like age, but there are a lot of people who are, oh, well, by this age, you need to do this thing. And so it's just 'cause and it's so weird because for women, it never ends because when you get married and then it's the next step of, like, the kids, and then when you're like, "Well, like, yeah, that's not really something we want," like,
Mm.
that's not the life we want, and we have a dog who's our child, and we love him just like we love a human baby, and for a while, it's so people can't, like, fathom that you don't choose to do that. I'm like, It doesn't mean that I love children all the same. I have tons of nieces and nephews, and I love them, with all my heart. But it just wasn't the path that, I wanted to take for my life personally. And I think, like, because I have a younger sister who's please don't kill me for Shakira if you're listening. But I have a younger sister who is like in her early 30s. And I'm like, girl, and I see her out there growing and living and evolving, and she's not out there stressed out about, like, having a partner in life. She's like, "Look, I'm out here working on me and doing me and making sure that I feel confident in my life, and then, like, that person will come." Like, and it's like you said, like, there's a thing that happens when people are confident and love themselves. You can tell, and those people are gravitating, like you said, they're magnetic, like, it's the vibe, and people want the vibe. They're like, how can I hang out? Like, and it's just like you mentioned, it's like, it's not just like of the, like for the relationship, for like a loving, that type of relationship, love relationship, but it's just friends, and it's just businesses, partnerships, and things like that when you're like walking in like who you are and you know that. So I just love this, and I love that you are supporting women in that way to just help them fully step into who they are.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really the mission is, helping women get to the path that is theirs, right? I'm
Mhm.
not in the business of being prescriptive, right? That's what was
Mhm.
born. That's what, really flourished in this whole
Mhm.
story, right? Is that I don't want to tell you how to live your life, but I definitely want to give you the tools to figure out what is the best way that you're going to be happy
Right.
and fulfilled in your life.
Yeah. Now, Fanny, we have to talk about, some of the challenges. What do you see, are some of the biggest challenges that women face in the breakup recovery and singlehood? Like, what are you seeing today?
I mean, I'm seeing a lot of women feeling the pressure of settling
Mm,
because they're a certain age,
mhm,
um, and they struggle to think expansively about what it is to get the things that they want in their lives.
mhm,
I see a lot of women who are just really struggling to explore a life outside of their partners, their ex-partners,
right.
and kind of falling into that trap of romanticizing something that wasn't actually healthy, right?
Mhm, mhm,
And a lot of those things are avoidance, right? They're a form of not really wanting to be honest with yourself about where you are in your life, about loss, or really feeling paralyzed by some of the shame or guilt that comes with where
mhm,
you're at right now. And I think those are things that can really prevent us from learning new things, right? Because it's
mhm.
almost like we'll feel like it's just over. There is nothing else. But in
Right.
fact, you just open a new door. You just have to be willing to acknowledge it's there.
Exactly. And now what are some of the do's and don'ts? So, when people are in that breakup recovery phase, like where should women be leaning into? And what should they be like, nope, no, thank
Mm.
you. Let's avoid this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that especially women, we need to be leaning into our communities.
Mhm,
I think because we are often in very patriarchal communities,
mhm,
when we're in relationships, we're often encouraged to kind of make our lives about our partners,
mhm,
especially if it's a male partner, right? And
mhm,
kind of always deferring or just always uh, minding their needs, right?
mhm,
As well.
mhm,
And so I think that, you know, some women in relationships really struggle with juggling all of those cups that need to be filled, right? One being
mhm,
friendship, one being family, right? And so I think, and I think, a lot of women, we've been on both sides of that coin, right? Where we realize, like, oh, I'm just going to not see my friend anymore because they're in a relationship,
mhm.
or
Yeah.
you realize you haven't been as on top of the group chat, or you haven't really
Mhm,
reached out to your friend about catching up, and it's been like 3 months.
mhm,
And I think that that's a shame, right? Because,
mhm.
you know, that's a lifeline,
Yeah.
right? And I've always been so taken aback by how easily women will give up certain
Mhm,
parts of their lives that are just
mhm.
so nourishing, right? I think, I used to do a lot of work with first time moms. It's the same thing,
Right.
right?
Mhm. Yeah.
This hesitancy to advocate for yourself, for what you need to be able to access your other cups because you're a mother now. This is what you wanted. You need to just be completely a martyr for your child and your family now, right? When it
Right.
just doesn't have to be that way. You
Exactly.
have a village.
Yeah. And just like you mentioned, but you see it happen so often, right? Like it starts with a lot of people when they get married, then they stop hanging out or they stop having time to catch up with people. And then when the kids come, it's like they completely have just turned into like a parent. And they're just a parent who wants to do play dates all the time and I remember this because I saw it with, like, a group of friends that I had at one point, one season in my life, where they had all become moms, and I was still, like, the one that didn't have, children, and every time we try to get together, it would always turn into a play date. Like, it start with like, "Oh, okay, so what do we wanna do?" And just because I'd be last to answer, every time it would be like this one person would be like, "Oh, well, I can host at my house." And I was like, "No, no." 'Cause every time I would see the note that said I could host at my house, I already knew where it was heading. And then it would be like, "Oh, okay, that's cool. Then I don't know, well, I'm gonna bring little so and so." And it's like, "Oh, yeah, that's cool, then the kids can play together," and I was like, no." And so I, like, eventually just thought I didn't go because, and I remember one of the other girls asked, "Oh, yeah, well, they were just sad because, like, you never come," and I said, "Well, it's no disrespect to you all, but I don't wanna be disrespectful to your kids because I feel like now we can't talk about, like, everything." We have to,
Mhm.
like, monitor the conversations that we're gonna have because now you all have just turned into, like, a daycare moment, and I don't want that. Like, I wanna go hang out with my friends, and I wanna be able to say whatever.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you have every right to feel that way, right? And what I often like to say is like there's room for everything,
Mhm.
right? Because as a friend of someone who has kids, you should want to hang out with their kids sometimes because that is a part of their lives and you are part of a community and that's what it means is for
Yeah.
you to be an auntie or your mom's friend and for them to
Mm,
see what
right.
healthy adult friendships look like, right?
Mhm.
We want to show children that, but there's a balance, right? Where
Yeah.
when you hang out with your friend you know that sometimes you're gonna get the mom version of your friend, and you know to expect that, and you know what
Right.
that experience is like, but that you also get, you know, the friend that, isn't thinking about her
Yes.
kids right now because the kids are taken care of, right?
It
And that might be the version of her that you miss.
Yes, because I found, like, what we were getting all the time was just the one like, what I was getting was always them bringing the kids, the
Mhm.
mom version, and I think they didn't really see it. I don't think they meant any harm by it, but they just were like, "Oh, it's a cool way, like, we can hang out, and then we can let our kids hang out." But for me, I was just like, "No, I mean, I don't do that every time, and I also don't wanna just be in the house, like, let's go out into let's go get lunch somewhere, so but yeah, I truly think like that is important. And even as a person who doesn't have kids, as just a wife, like I've always made sure that like I have maintained my individuality as Kyra. Like I'm not
Mhm.
just somebody's wife. I'm Kyra first, and I will always be me. And then the great part
Mhm.
is that I'm a partner to this person and I get to be this person's wife too. But I'm always showing up as me. And I think that's important. And it's just what I mean, because like clearly when growing up as a child in the 80s or whatever, you see like your parents, like my mom didn't like she didn't work for a really long time because she was like a stay-at-home mom and like and you're right that deferral to the dad as like the person the head of the household. It's like wow, this is awesome. Like you don't know because you're a child, but like I couldn't even imagine like that being my life as the person that I am today. Like very much
Yeah.
a decision maker in my in my house, like,
Mhm.
all the time. And it's just like conversations are had and it's like, oh, okay. And yeah, so I think this, you think this, and let's come to a conclusion. But it's never like the deferral to someone else to be like, well, you got it.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think you bring up another a really important point of something that a lot of women struggle with, especially in dating. So I'm not specifically a dating coach. I don't really strategize with people about how to date.
Mhm.
Um, but I do kind of help them examine their expectations
Mm,
and,
mhm,
the kind of yeah, just examining that they do when they let people into their lives, right?
mhm.
Whether it's friendship or romance, right? Or even a returning family member, right?
Yes.
I think
Yes.
that a lot of times we have these checklists in our minds,
Mhm.
right? And I'll have a client say, "Well, he wants kids." And I'll be like, "Okay, what does that mean? What does that even mean? He wants kids. That can mean so many things. There are
Right.
so many ways to be a dad."
Mhm.
Right? Like, I'm
Mhm.
sure even we had different kinds of dads.
Right.
Like,
Right.
I feel
Yeah.
like there's you could be a weekend dad. You could just mean that you want offspring and have no interest in parenting your children. You might, be a breadwinner and you're like, you really take that seriously of being this
Mhm.
provider and you feel like because that's your role, you don't need to be emotionally available to your children. Right?
Right.
That's
Yeah.
also a certain kind of dad. A lot of
Yes.
people grew up with that dad, right? Like he was present, but he wasn't really present. And so, you know, I feel like those are the kinds of conversations I want my
Mhm.
client to have more about. No, that box is not checked until you know exactly what they mean by saying that. When you understand their values enough to know, like, well, are we values aligned? It doesn't matter if you both want kids, if you think very differently about what it means to raise those kids, right?
Yes.
And so really helping women facilitate those conversations with themselves so that they know
Mhm.
what they need, so that
Yeah.
then they can really differentiate,
Mhm.
if someone is actually compatible to them.
Yes. Y'all, Fanny is dropping the nuggets today. Like, I mean, this is so needed. Like, it's so needed because like you said, there's so many people who just have a checklist. And if you're at that place in life where you feel like, "Oh my gosh, I have to make a move in the next 5 years," then you are right. People can just sort of look at it as a check the box, like, "Oh, he said, he wanted kids." And you don't understand, like, you don't have a discussion around what that looks like so that you know if, like you mentioned, if your values are aligned and how you plan to raise those children that he says he wants. And it could just save you, like, don't be afraid to just have the conversations because it can save you from the pain on the backside. Just go ahead and have the conversations now. I mean, people and if it's somebody that you're like, "Well, actually, I don't think this is gonna work." Wouldn't you rather know that now than, like, 10 years down the road when then you're like, "Oh my god, I gotta get out of this because I this this
Yeah.
person, they're not doing what I want them to do," or, "It's not the way I thought it was gonna be." So I think that's just really important, that you mentioned that. And I love, again, like, I'm gonna say this over and over and over, that I love that you've created this space, for women to feel safe in hearing that. And, in hearing it with compassion and hearing it from someone who wants to help them and not someone who's out to, like, hurt them or make them feel bad about, something, but it's just to, like, to give them the tools that they need to make the best decisions for themselves.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think it's really needed. And you know, I feel passionate about this work because I feel like there were specific things that I did in my singlehood journey
Mhm.
that are kind of gifts that continue to give. So
Yeah.
I just celebrated 15 years with my partner. We were married about 8 years ago, but we met in 2010. So we've been together for
Congratulations.
15 years. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to sit here and say the grass is greener, right? I think that everyone has their struggles. I think
Mhm.
the biggest challenge of any kind of relationship, friendship, familial, romance, is the challenge of growing together and making room
Mhm.
for everyone to be able to grow into their
Mhm.
authentic selves. And, that is, something that kind of ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
And to be able to do that in a marriage, it's challenging. So I'm not going to sit here and say, girl, you just need to get married and everything's going to be fine. No, your
Nope.
personal development journey is going to continue. But I do find that some of what has made uh, me and my partner's bond so strong and continue to be strong
Mhm.
is these shared values,
Mhm.
is all of that work that I did on myself before we met. I traveled a lot. I rekindled friendships. I
Mhm.
learned new hobbies. I grew new passions. I took
Mhm.
care of my body, and I learned so many things about myself that I was able to understand what I was willing to compromise on and what I
Right.
wasn't. Right. And I wasn't just going, by the wind of whatever, whoever I was infatuated with at the time, which I think is
Mhm.
what happens, right?
Yeah.
It's like we get so kind of punch drunk of,
Yeah.
in emotions with someone and that connection, and we have those rose-colored glasses, but if we're not kind of strong in our foundation,
Mhm.
then we'll just kind of go in whatever direction, and
Yeah.
that doesn't always last.
Mm-mm, it does not. And I'm so glad you mentioned that because I definitely agree. Also, I think too, like any relationship that you want to work, like you make it's an active choice every day to say yes to it. And I think a lot of times people forget that, whether it's a marriage, whether it's a friendship, but it's an active choice to say, even when you don't want to say yes to it, like you have to show up and you have
Mhm.
to show up and you have to fight. And I will say this in terms of marriage. Like, I mean, my husband and I, we got to 20 years this year. And I thought about, I'm like, so we've been married for 20, together for 25. And I'm like, it's an active choice every day to say yes to being somebody's partner in life.
A
because it's
hundred
not
percent.
because it's not always the thing, it's not always it's never perfect. It's always a little mess in there. And it's, but it's like, but you show up for each other. And some days I remember I always say this on shows when we talk about like relationships and stuff. I had a cousin who said this to me when I was in college and I was single at the time, didn't have a boyfriend, whatever. And she was married. And she said the thing about like being married to someone, she said, is that you can never fall out of love at the same time. Cause she said, you're going to always love the person. She was like, you're always going to love them. She said, but are you going to be like in love with them? And she was just like, one person is always in a she said it's great when you both are in the same place. She said, "But if you're with somebody for a long time, the longer you grow together," she said, "as long as both of you don't fall out of love at the same time." And I was like, first of all, I was like, "What are you talking about, child? I don't have a boyfriend. Like, I don't wanna hear this." But then as I grew and I got married and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that was such solid advice back back then," and it stuck with me because I remembered it. I mean, even though, like, at the time, it didn't matter, like, I didn't have any, like, use for it then, but as I got married and started to go through the journey of being married to somebody, I mean, you have to show up differently, and you have to show up differently in friendships and as siblings and, like you said, as children, like, the way you show up now for your parents is or for me, like getting, being older now, the way I show up for my parents is very different from when I showed up when they were taking care of me.
Mhm.
And so we just have
Yeah.
to make like everything's like an active, like everything is an active choice to say yes to something.
Mm. Definitely. I remember bell hooks, talking about all about love, where she talks about love being a verb, right? To
Mm.
love, right? That it is an active choice that we make every day. And I will be honest, there are days where I wake up and I do not choose love. I choose petty. I choose some soft version of revenge because I don't want to go to jail. And I'm not a violent person. I will be very honest, I'm not perfect. And I'm sure, my husband will say the same, but I think
Yeah.
that at the end of the day, to make a point to choose that more often than not is really what keeps things going.
Exactly. I love that. Now, Fanny, let's talk about boundaries, right? We know, just as you mentioned earlier, being sort of that prescriptive life that you should live and you should have and do these things. Why are boundaries so important for women, especially to protect both the peace and the growth?
Hmm. I think that oftentimes, that's funny. I had an interesting conversation with a client about this before, where we will get upset with people because we'll say things like, "Ugh, they cross my boundaries. They're always crossing my boundaries."
Hmm.
And I realize that I think a lot of us will have a very we're a bit misunderstood about what boundaries are.
Hmm.
So boundaries are kind of these self-contained rules that we have for ourselves. So other people, they don't cross our boundaries. We cross our boundaries. And so what I mean by that is, if you have set a rule for yourself, a self-containing rule that says, when people yell at me, I'm going to walk away. That's my
Hmm.
boundary, right? When I hear that, I know that I'm going to protect my peace by walking away and not engaging in a heated argument with someone,
Hmm.
right? And so when someone comes and yells at you, right? And you don't walk away, that's you breaking your own boundary because you told
Mhm.
yourself, I was going to let people talk to me like that.
Right.
But here you are letting people talk to you like that.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think what people really are talking about is kind of the limits and the rules that we set with other people.
Mhm.
Right. It is a limit for you to, um, call me out of my name. Right. I have
Mhm.
established to you, I've communicated to you that if you call me out of my name, I'm going to have to put my boundaries in place, which means I'm going to walk away. I'm not going to
Mhm.
engage with you. Right.
Yeah.
And people break rules all the time. We break
Mhm.
rules all the time. We break rules. We, you know, we cross limits all the time, and so it is our responsibility to maintain the consequences of people crossing that limit, right?
Mhm.
By establishing our boundaries and keeping to them.
Right. Yes. No, I love that. Yes, I love that, and, I love that you explained it because I think people hear boundaries and then they just, I mean, if you aren't doing the work to sort of talk about boundaries and the types of boundaries you need to set, then it can be very like a wide net of like,
Mhm.
"Oh, is this a boundary?" Um, all right. So I know we talked about a little bit earlier about community, right? So, why is this so important, especially when you're single? And what role have you seen that it plays in healing and empowerment?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that it's very easy to feel like you're the only one going through something, right? I think it's very easy to feel like um, you are going to be more and more isolated because of the choices that you've made.
Mhm.
And so to be amongst other people who have made those choices too,
Right.
who perhaps have made them in the past and look at where they are and they're doing great and I aspire to that, right? I
Mhm.
think it's important to see the things that you want to see and to know that you don't have to be alone to get there. I think that especially, and this may have come up in the example you gave earlier about your friends, right? I think that when you're a single woman of a certain age and you start to see the shift in your community because you may have friends that start having kids, that get married, and depending on the friend, they might be very good at maintaining the friendship and being, reciprocal and still showing up in the ways that they can, just like you do, right? But for the most part, you feel like things have changed and it becomes a
Mhm.
little bit more isolating, right? And
Mhm.
so I think a lot of the remedy for that isn't just in, I need my friend to act better, right?
Yeah.
Or I need to be a martyr for my friend and forgive every single time they flake on me about making plans, right? I think it's like, okay, they're in a new era or they're really focused on filling this cup in their lives and I really want to focus on filling this cup. And one person can't fill all the cups. And so is it more of a sign that I need to go find someone else to help me fill this cup? And that might be other women trying to fill the same cup for themselves, right?
Mhm.
I want someone to go apple picking with because it's fall now. I
Mhm.
want to, go on that big destination trip to Greece, right? Or Bali, right? Who else
Mhm.
has disposable income for that? Probably not your friend that's having kids, right? Or just paid for some big expensive wedding, right? But maybe another single girly who's like, I want to go to Greece too. I just don't want to go by myself because I'm not Tracy Ellis Ross. And, I need a buddy. I need a buddy. And so, I think that we need to facilitate more of those experiences so that we don't feel like we're limited in
Mhm.
the community that we have. And then to be able to see that our community becomes even more expansive and our understanding of the world
Mhm.
becomes more expansive.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. I love that. Um, all right. So what we're gonna do now, everybody, because I could talk to Fanny like forever. First of all, her voice is so soothing and I could just listen to her talk. But we are going to slowly move into our three things so we can be respectful of her time. But first, the last question I want to ask you is how can people reach out to you, connect to you directly through coaching courses or join your community?
Yeah. So I do have a community called The Village by Her Soul Supply. You can learn about that on my website, hersoulsupply.com. People also follow me on Instagram. I'm pretty active there at Her Soul Supply. And we will be taking new members for The Village, which is a kind of monthly social club for single women that also comes with some personal development tools and curriculum to really help women implement and be accountable to their personal growth.
Nice. I love that. Makes me want to sneak in as a married person, but all right. Well, Fanny, we're gonna roll into three things with Fanny. Three questions I'm gonna ask you. Just helps our audience get to know you a little bit better. The first one is a two-parter, and one of my favorite questions to ask is, how do you start and end the day?
How do I start and end the day? Well, I usually snuggle up with my daughter because I have to wake her up to go to school. So I'm like, I'll get 5 more minutes if I just,
Mhm.
snuggle in with her and we have a little moment, and she tends to be a little bit more grounded when I wake her up and we've been cuddling, and so that's, I think, my favorite way to wake up in the morning. It's a happy
Oh,
place for me.
yes.
And I think the way that I end my day is with my skincare routine. It's very important to me.
Mhm. Yes.
It's kind of a small act of self-care that I just don't ever, let go of. I think it happens, right? We don't always get our nails done, or we don't
Mhm.
get our hair done as much, or, there are periods of, being on top of things and not. But I
Yeah.
find that just kind of giving myself a little glow up on my face every night makes
Yes.
me feel, like I'm just preparing for the best recharge of my life every night. So I
Yes.
make sure to
I
do
love
that.
that. Fantastic. The second is, what is a goal or an intention that you set for yourself this year? And since we're toward the end of the year, if you could tell us where you are with it.
Oh, yes. So, building her soul supply has definitely been a journey, right? To build a
Mhm.
brand, to build awareness. I think that it's been an incredibly tough year for people. A lot has gone on in the world. People feel very overwhelmed.
Mhm.
And I feel like one of my biggest goals is, how do I reach my girls? Like, how do I
Mhm.
find them so that,
Mhm.
I can cut through that noise and let them know that I'm here whenever they're ready?
Mhm.
And I think this year I have learned so much just through my entrepreneurial journey and,
Mhm.
you know, leaning into community really and practicing what I preach. And so I've been really excited to, start developing partnerships with different local owned businesses and really bring a lot of the work that I've been doing online with Her Soul Supply to life in person. And so I have actually been able to connect with a few coffee shops and just
Yeah.
spaces where I know a lot of women like to hang out,
Mhm.
and really bring the programming to them. And so I'm so, so excited to end the year off in really furthering that community.
Awesome. All right. And the last question is, where are you currently finding inspiration?
Where am I currently finding inspiration? That's a good question. I think I'm very inspired by, honestly, other female entrepreneurs.
Mhm.
I think that, I recently went to something called CultureCon. I don't know if you've heard of it before.
I've heard
Yeah.
of it. Never been there, but heard
Yeah.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it started many years ago, but it was my first time, and I was so amazed at
Mhm.
what looks like the future of business, right? That
Mhm.
it seems like the future of business does not need suits. Right? That you have a lot of people who are taking their passions, their creative endeavors, and really learning business in a way that is going to reach people. And I find it so inspiring when I go to spaces like this because, one of the hardest parts of being a business owner is to wake up every day and believe in yourself. Like, you have to believe in what you're doing because it's not an easy task, right? I know we all
Yeah.
want to be our own boss in ways, but it's hard to be your own boss
Mhm.
and you have to believe in yourself. And so I feel very energized when I go to events with other business owners, whether it's, for people within my community, amongst women, amongst people of color. I think that those are places that really make me feel like I'm on the right path. I'm doing something that matters, and it's just a matter of time, um,
Yeah.
for, the right person to find me.
Yes, yes. Awesome. Well, Fanny, I just want to say thank you so much for coming today and sharing. I feel like I need to have you back on again because I feel like we just scratched the surface, and there's so much more to like talk about because this topic is, to me, is just like so big and so important, especially for women. And and like you mentioned, yes, to have a space, considering everything, like the world is heavy, life is heavy, and just to have a space that feels like, people get you. amongst my people. So I'm really glad that you're also, online, but you're also able to like connect offline with people. That's really important. But before I let you go, I do have one final question for you. It is, what are three things you'd like our audience to take away from our conversation today?
Well, one is remember that the world is always bigger than you think it is. That is a really, really important takeaway that I have for folks. The second thing is mm, really be able to understand your values and why, right? Like, why do you believe in what you believe in? If you can't really answer that question, you might have been
Mhm.
prescribed to believe those things, right? And
Mhm.
so you want to do a little bit of work on that and exploration. And the third thing is, kind of leads into the third thing, which is you are forever a student, right? We are all students of life. And so make sure that you're always finding a way to be a student and really learn something new.
Awesome. I love that. Oh, those were all very inspiring, Fanny. Well, I just want to say thank you again. And I am just rooting for you and everything that you're doing to help women.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome. Stay tuned, everyone. I'll be right back. All right. Thank you again to Fanny for joining the show today. You can find out more about her and the work she does in the show notes. We'll drop all the links there. Also, if you'd like to learn more about Glow Up Girl, make sure you visit glowupgirl.com and sign up for our newsletter to get tools, insights, and inspiration for your glow up journey. Also, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are at Glow Up Girl, and wherever you're listening, don't forget to rate, review, and share. It helps more women find the show. And if you're sharing on social, make sure you tag us so we can cheer you on and support you. All right. If you are a brand or business looking to partner with a community of women chasing big dreams, Glow Up Girl is now accepting sponsorship. So you can reach out at hello@glowupgirl.com. All right, I want to say thank you again to Fanny for joining the show. I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to spend a little time with me. And I'll see you all next week. So until then, stay focused, fab, and glow up. Take care, everyone.